He wasn't just a footballer, he was a mood, a myth, a man who danced through games like jazz, untamed, unpredictable, unforgettable. Long before football romanticized the word maverick, Alan Hudson lived it, and the game never quite knew what to do with him. Born in the shadows of Stamford Bridge, he was Chelsea's local prodigy, a street kid with silk in his boots and fire in his veins. But brilliance came at a cost. The system wanted obedience. Huddy gave them art. Huddy saw things 10 seconds before anyone else, John Hollins once said. He didn't just play the game, he painted it. This isn't the story of perfection, it's the story of flawed greatness, of genius that clashed with control, of a man who, for a few electric years, redefined what a midfielder could be, and then was quietly forgotten. But not here. Because here, we remember the ones who didn't fit the system, the rebels, the romantics, the ones who played for the love, not the legend. Subscribe if you believe football should never forget its forgotten poets. June 21st, 1951, in the heart of Chelsea, London. Alan Hudson was born just a stone's throw from the stadium that would one day chant his name. The streets were his first pitch, the lampposts his goalposts, the ball his only constant. He didn't grow up dreaming of tactics or training routines. He grew up surviving, and the ball became both escape and identity. Fulham looked at him and passed. Chelsea looked again and saw a gem they couldn't ignore. At just 17 years old, Hudson made his debut for Chelsea. By 1969, he was no longer the prospect. He was the pulse. In his first spell, he made 145 appearances and scored 10 goals, but those numbers never told the story. Because Hudson wasn't measured in stats. He was measured in moments, turns that sent defenders flying, passes that split time in half. He missed the 1970 FA Cup final through injury, a moment that might have broken a lesser spirit. But Hudson wasn't wired that way. Instead of sulking, he came back stronger, commanding Chelsea's midfield with a mix of swagger, precision, and imagination. English football hadn't seen in decades. He didn't just play the game, he played it his way. And Chelsea fans knew they were witnessing something rare. They called him a playmaker. But really, he was a conductor, orchestrating the rhythm of every move, seeing passes before others saw possibilities. The streets that raised him already knew. Now the world was beginning to understand. By the early 70s, Alan Hudson wasn't just a Chelsea star, he was the living embodiment of King's Road swagger. London's football scene had never seen anything quite like him. With John Hollins and Peter Houseman beside him, Chelsea's midfield became a masterpiece, all rhythm, grit, and grace. Then came 1971, the year that etched Hudson into European folklore. In the Cup Winners' Cup final, Chelsea faced Real Madrid. Once wasn't enough, it took a replay. But in the end, Chelsea triumphed, and Hudson's fingerprints were all over it. He didn't just contribute, he conducted, threading passes through chaos, finding space in storms. At just 20, he outshone seasoned internationals on the grandest stage. But even in glory, Hudson remained different. He didn't bow to authority, he didn't play politics, he didn't pretend. Coaches admired his talent but struggled with his fire because Hudson didn't follow rules. He rewrote them with every no-look pass, every feint, every gasp from the terraces. A rebel in boots, a romantic in midfield. And the crowd? They didn't just cheer him, they believed in him. On King's Road, he wasn't just a player, he was poetry in motion. In 1974, Chelsea, buried under financial chaos, sold their crown jewel. Alan Hudson was 22, in his prime. And suddenly, the artist of King's Road was headed to the industrial heartbeat of England, Stoke-on-Trent. It felt like a mismatch. Glamour boy in a working man's town. But Tony Waddington, Stoke's visionary manager, saw something others didn't. He broke the club's transfer record, paying £240,000 to bring Hudson north. What happened next was transformation. Hudson didn't just fit in, he elevated everything. The 1974-75 season became the stuff of Stoke legend. Hudson ran the midfield, passed through crowds. He gave Stoke rhythm, gave the fans belief. They finished just 4 points shy of the First Division title. It remains one of the closest brushes with glory in the club's history. And it wasn't just results, it was how they played. A 23-match unbeaten home run. Moments of unexpected beauty in a place that had only ever known hard work. Hudson gave them flair without arrogance, grace without detachment. A London rebel who earned the love of Stoke's loyal, unflashy faithful. At the Victoria Ground, he became more than a player. He was their conductor, their creator, their hero. And in return, they gave him something Chelsea never quite could: unconditional love. In 1976, Alan Hudson made another move, this time to Arsenal. A new stage, a bigger club, a chance perhaps to reignite the flame. But sometimes, the brightest fires don't blend, they burn. At Highbury, structure ruled. Under Terry Neal, the blueprint came first: shape, discipline, control. But Hudson? He didn't follow patterns, he bent them. He wasn't built for chalkboards, he was built for instinct. Injuries didn't help, they dulled his rhythm. But deeper still were the tensions between Hudson's freedom and Arsenal's framework, between a conductor and a metronome. He reached the 1978 FA Cup final, but was benched in the biggest moment. Arsenal lost 1-0 to Ipswich, and that was the end of the beginning. You can't tame fire with structure, they'd later say, and Arsenal tried. Hudson left with no glory, no closure, just another reminder that football often chooses order over imagination. Because sometimes, when fire meets fire, it doesn't light the room, it just burns it down. In 1979, Alan Hudson crossed the Atlantic. Signed by the Seattle Sounders, he entered the NASL, a league built on stars, spectacle, and second chances. In England, he was a rebel. In America, he was a revelation. Here, there were no rigid tactics, no systems trying to box him in, just wide-open pitches and fans who wanted magic. Hudson didn't just play, he performed. Flicks, feints, outside of the boot passes from angles no one else saw. He wasn't part of the team, he elevated it. He brought Chelsea swagger to the Pacific Northwest, and the fans loved him for it. No tabloids, no critics, just football with room to breathe. Later, he joined the Cleveland Force, mastering the tighter, faster world of indoor soccer, where vision and quick feet were everything. And Hudson still had both. He didn't come for trophies, he came for freedom. And in that freedom, he found something rare. A game that let him be himself. America wasn't the top of the football pyramid, but for Hudson, it was peace. For a man who could dictate a game with the flick of a boot, Alan Hudson's England career reads like a riddle. Just 2 caps. 2. His debut came in 1975 against the reigning world champions, West Germany. England won 2-0. Hudson ran the show. Calm, commanding, creative, a statement performance. His second game, a 5-0 demolition of Cyprus. 2 games, 2 wins, total control. And then, silence. No more call-ups, no tournaments, no explanation. Why? Because Don Revie, England's manager at the time, didn't want flair. He wanted obedience, structure, control. Hudson? He was none of those things. He was outspoken, unfiltered, unbothered by politics. And in an era when personality was seen as a threat, that made him expendable. Some said he lacked discipline. Others whispered about off-field habits. But everyone, teammates, opponents, fans, knew the truth. He was too gifted to ignore, but too independent to trust. While others played safe and kept their place, Hudson watched from the outside. His genius locked out by a system that feared it. And so England moved on, with less imagination and without its most natural creator. Because sometimes, in football, the cost of freedom is exile. By the late 90s, Alan Hudson was no longer in football's headlines. But life hadn't finished with him yet. In 1997, everything changed. He was hit by a car, a hit and run, left crumpled in the street. Broken bones, brain trauma, collapsed lung. He was given a 5% chance to survive. Told he'd never walk again. But they didn't know Alan Hudson. The same fire that clashed with managers, that refused to conform, now became his weapon. Step by painful step, he proved the doctors wrong. He didn't return to football, he returned to life. And from that broken place, a new voice emerged. He began to write. The Working Man's Ballet, a memoir that read like a love letter to working-class genius. Huddy, raw and reflective. He spoke in schools, advocated for former players abandoned by the system, not for fame, but because he knew what it felt like to be discarded. He fought for pensions, healthcare, dignity, because too many footballers gave their bodies to the game and were left with nothing. No spotlight, no grand stage, just a man, surviving, writing, remembering, and still refusing to play by anyone else's rules. In a world that forgets its fallen heroes, Alan Hudson became something deeper. A voice for the voiceless. No statue, no England medals, no sainthood from the FA. And yet, to those who played with him, to those who watched him, Alan Hudson was unforgettable. Ask his teammates, they'll tell you, he saw the game before it happened. He passed like a poet. He made the ball sing. Ask the defenders who chased shadows. Ask the fans who watched a working-class wizard bring magic to muddy pitches. He didn't have a marketing team, didn't chase headlines, didn't play the game outside the game. He just played, beautifully, stubbornly, freely. He wasn't part of the system, but he inspired a generation who would dare to break it. Without Hudson, maybe there's no Hoddle, no Gascoigne, no midfielders who dared to glide instead of grind. He didn't fit the mold. But maybe that's the point. Because his legacy isn't in the trophies he didn't win, it's in the silence he left behind. That ache, that question. What if they just let him play? He was a genius the game never quite understood, and that's exactly why he matters. Some players are remembered for what they won. Alan Hudson is remembered for how he played. He didn't chase applause. He didn't follow the script. He danced through games like jazz, loose, brilliant, defiant. In every pass, he painted a picture. In every game, he pushed back against the gray of conformity. And when the lights dimmed, when the caps never came, when the world moved on, he kept going. Wounded, forgotten, written off, but never bitter, never broken. Because Hudson was never playing for the headlines. He was playing for the moment. And in those moments, he gave us something rare. A reminder that football isn't just about trophies, it's about feeling. It's about the artists who gave us magic and paid the price for it. Subscribe if you believe those stories still matter. If you believe flawed brilliance is still brilliance. Because we remember not just the legends who lifted trophies, but the rebels who lifted our hearts.